After another dispiriting loss before the All-Star break, we'll go over the top 5 people in the Magic organization who have the most pressure on them for the rest of the year. This is the Orlando Magic Nation, your source for all things Orlando Magic on YouTube. For Magic fans, by a Magic fan. I'm Edwin Valentine, and I want to thank you very much for clicking on this video and spending a little bit of time talking Magic with me. Got to do the normal YouTube things, like, share, drop a comment below on who you think has the most pressure on them for the rest of the season. And if you want to do so, hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on any content that I produce. So, another bad loss, this time to Milwaukee. Cam Thomas just going crazy, and it kind of hit you twice because you were hoping maybe the Magic would add Cam Thomas as exactly what he was for Milwaukee, end up being a bench guy who can just have rational confidence and drop 30 at any point, and he did exactly that against the Magic. So now, as we sit in the All-Star break, 28 and 25, kind of listless at times. They did finish the right before the All-Star break 3-1, albeit a gift from the Jazz, and beating Brooklyn and Milwaukee really isn't a murderer's row, but at least we were 3-1 before the All-Star break. But that last loss really leaves a taste in your mouth, especially a bad one, because you end up having now to sit, especially since nobody was in the All-Star game from the Magic, so there wasn't even a way to celebrate anybody other than poor Jace, who had a tumble there in the dunk contest. But either way, we moved past the All-Star break. Now we're looking forward. We're going to look, okay, who has the most pressure on them for the rest of the regular season? Now, I put together a top 5 who have the most pressure. This is in order of likelihood of not being with the organization going into next year. So the first person I would say that has the most pressure on them for the rest of the regular season is Paolo. Paolo has played well, right? Like, if you look at it, it's not really bad. It's not like he's scoring 15 points a game with 4 rebounds and 3 assists or anything like that. He's actually played pretty well. But when we had expectations, and the NBA world had expectations of Paolo making a leap in his 4th year, because this is normally when guys make that leap, it's been underwhelming so far, especially with the funk that he was in when he first came back after his injury. But he's played well. Like, again, this is why I talked about in the offseason, narrative is important, because now the narrative is, oh, the nerds are against him. They're looking at his effective field goal percentage. They're looking at all these different things that, to be fair, I also pointed out in the offseason. But it's just an avalanche of negativity right now. If you go on Twitter, which I would hope you don't go on Twitter, I only go to like post things about the podcast. But man, if you go on there, it's just doom and gloom. Paulo's the worst. We need to trade him. Zach Lowe on his podcast was talking about possibly trading him as well for Giannis. So did Bill Simmons, and all these big name NBA guys doing podcasts. We're talking about trading Paolo. So when you get to that level, obviously they have to have clicks. They have to make their shows interesting. But there is a kernel of truth to that, in that people are talking about that. That is a discussion point. That, yes, it would be for Giannis, so that would be at least a big haul, a good haul for Paolo Banchero. But still, even just discussing possibly having to trade Paolo this early in a career that has a lot of promise already just shows you what pressure Paolo has been. And maybe that was maybe that's why he was in such a funk when he came back from his injury, that he had heard all the whispers about Paolo being the best player on the team, and that the team plays so much better without him, and all the different things that was being said at the time. Maybe that did get to him. Maybe the pressure is starting to get to him, and maybe he's seen that, all right, he has a 250 plus $1 million contract in the next few years. That is he gonna have to live up to that? And just, who knows? Maybe that's what had him in his head a lot earlier on in the season. But he's been playing much better so far. This is not something that I believe. I don't believe they should get off of Paolo. Paolo should be the cornerstone, or a co-cornerstone of this franchise, and Paolo should not go anywhere. I don't believe he should, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on him now. Now, once we get to the playoffs, we know Paolo has performed really well in the playoffs the last 2 seasons. But if it's another first round exit, That's not going to look good on him being the franchise player, especially if he plays about 70 games, which he's on course to do unless he gets injured again. He didn't miss that many games, right? He would be eligible for first team All NBA, for MVPs or all these other season ending awards. He could have been eligible if he stays healthy for the rest of the year. He just hasn't had that wind behind him. And again, the narrative bit is really what's really starting to hurt right now. So it's not even so much like, oh, okay, let's say he scores like he did last year, 27, 28 points a game after the All-Star break. Maybe he can start sneaking into some of those conversations and he's able to get the Magic into the top 6 so they don't have to worry about a play-in. Could that be something that would turn the tide? Possibly, but even then, now that Giannis wasn't traded in the deadline, and now that it's a possibility that he could be traded in the offseason, there probably will be rumblings again if Paolo doesn't perform well that, hey, the Magic should get off of Paolo and trade him for Giannis. So that's why I have Paolo on this list. That would have been unthinkable, I think, at the beginning of the season, but just the ball has started rolling on, okay, should the Magic just build around Franz and shooting? Is that what we should do? When I think that's misplaced. I think that's way too early. I think Paolo is going to be a cornerstone and should be a franchise leader for the Magic, but he's on this list because he's going to have a ton of pressure on him now, especially with the update we had on Franz's injury. With Franz going to be out indefinitely, reevaluated in 3 weeks, but out indefinitely, that's just going to be more pressure on Paolo, and we'll see how he is able to make the call at that point. So that's Paolo. Number 4, I'd say we're going in order, 5 to 4. For me, it's Jalen. Actually, Jalen Suggs is another one that's going to have a lot of pressure on him because we've already heard the whispers as well for him to be traded with AB's ascension at this point. The Magic aren't going to be able to pay everybody, right? Then Jalen's contract is a good one. Jalen is able, like his contract descends every single year. He's at, I believe, 35 this year, and then it goes down to 32. And over the course of the contract, it ends up being beneficial for the Magic because the cap is always going to go up and his contract is going to go down. So it's one that is, you're able to stomach it, even though we're going to get real expensive. Now, with AB's ascension and how much are they going to pay AB, that's a big discussion point that's been on Reddit and Twitter and all those places where Magic fans congregate and sound miserable most of the time. So who knows if that's something that that would be something that the Magic would do now that they have AB, that people feel AB can step into Jalen's shoes. I don't think he can. This is another one that I wouldn't do either. Jalen for me is a cornerstone as well. He's one of the core 4. For me, I wouldn't change. I wouldn't trade Jalen at all. Jalen does so many things that AB just can't do. Now, will AB be able to do them? Possibly. And then if we have them both, that would be incredible as well. We still have AB for another year on his rookie contract, even if we don't get an extension done this summer. And then he'll be a restricted free agent the year after that. And recently, restricted free agents haven't really been getting offers so that the Magic would have to match. So this is a kind of a moot point for me. It is not really something that we have to talk about too much about how much we're going to pay AB, and then AB is going to affect Jalen. So Jalen is, however, going to start hearing about the fact that he's constantly injured. So if he's able to now string a bunch of games, which he has been relatively healthy the last few games, if he's able to continue to be healthy throughout the rest of the season, then I think hopefully he'll be able to put a lot of that stuff to bed. Not all put to bed, because obviously if you look at his basketball reference, you'll see all the games he's missed. But if he comes through in the playoffs, if he's able to wreak the havoc that he normally does and be such a difference maker that he is in the playoffs, then at least some of that chatter will start to die down a little bit. And now, again, the Magic have been aggressive in the trade deadline, not the trade deadline, but in the offseason trades, as we saw last year. Well, that's kind of a one-time thing, really, but they were aggressive last year, knowing that this is the time for them to do things. So would they theoretically get aggressive again and try to get off of Jalen to get other assets? I don't know. But again, that's why I think there's going to be more pressure on Jalen to perform and to stay healthy for the rest of the year, so that if he does perform well, I think the Magic keep him. If he gets injured again, or if he doesn't perform all that well, this would be the last time that he would be classified as a positive contract, or at least not a negative contract, or the Magic being underwater on the contract. So this would be a decision making time for the front office. So that's why I would say that Jalen is on this list, having to have a lot of pressure to perform as well as he can. For me, number three, on people that need to perform very, very well for the rest of the year because they're going to be under a bunch of pressure, is Wendell Carter Jr. If you looked at the starting lineup at the beginning of the year, everyone said that okay, we have a core four, or we have four starters that they would kind of ride with, and then we have a fifth starter, which would be Wendell. Now, I feel that's a bit reductive. They're kind of putting down Wendell. Wendell does a lot for the team. I know his stats don't always pop off the screen, and they are all of his stats pretty much have started to decline over the course of this year so far. Maybe a nice break, the All-Star break. Maybe he was able to clear his head and maybe be able to come back playing much better. Let's hope. But if there was a person on the starting lineup that would be able to be traded without having so much effect on the rest of the team, it would be Wendell. Now, there would be an effect because Wendell does a lot on defense. He does a lot of switching. He does a lot of the dirty work, right? That's what Wendell does. Now, he hasn't gotten his hands as dirty, I would say, recently as he had at the beginning of the year, or he has in years past. So Wendell, as I mentioned, his 3-point shot, which was at 40% for a period of time there earlier in the year, is down to the early 30s. I think it's 33% right now. So it's starting really to wane, and I don't know if he's getting in his head again, and if he gets in his head and it just continues to plummet, then all the switching matters. But if we're not going to be a really good defense, which we haven't been for much of this year, then we're going to need more offensive pop, and then we're going to have to eventually look elsewhere. Now, that's something that I thought the Magic might do in the trade deadline that just passed, would be to upgrade in the center position, or at least the backup center position, or anything having to do with the bench, but that didn't happen. So c'est la vie. We move forward with what we have. But in the offseason, if Wendell hasn't performed well, he now next year he starts the beginning of a new extension. So his salary goes from about 10 this year to 18 next year. So boom, right there. There's going to be a lot that's going to have to come from him, and there's other guys out there that the Magic might be able to target for that amount of money. And if they decide to maybe just start Goga, and that's why they kept him in this trade deadline, they start Goga instead of Wendell, they can maybe get Wendell's contract, trade that one, and get two pieces for their bench. So I don't know. We'll see. Just right now, Wendell's not playing well enough for the Magic to really be very successful, and that's what we've seen. They haven't really been all that successful this year. Even when Wendell was playing well, there was a time that obviously we were rolling, for as much of rolling as we could have been this year. So he can make a positive impact on this team. I think we should try to keep him, but he would be the piece that I would move on from, to be able to shore up a bit of our bench, or to possibly upgrade at the center position, a starting center, if we're not looking to start Goga. Which, if you've watched my videos, I feel like we should start Goga because that adds more responsibility to him, and he's one of those guys that just needs that extra responsibility. Otherwise, he's going to kind of loaf, and that's how I feel. For me, Wendell is more of a power forward. Anyway, if you look at his basketball reference, or mostly if you look at his stats on cleaning the glass, I think he does better as a power forward as opposed to a center. The Magic have always had him at center once Paolo was there, which makes sense. But maybe the Magic could start experimenting with Paolo at the center, and then play AB along with Franz, Desmond, and Jalen. that could be our lineup of death if there was any way that it would be able to, if Paolo can somehow be able to hold up on defense against other centers. Who knows if that's something that he has in him? But all I know is that the Magic got to start trying new things, and unfortunately, Wendell would likely be the odd man out, and that's why I think he would be the most likely player to be moved on from in the offseason if the Magic underperform for the rest of the year. At number two, I would say it's Jeff Weltman. Jeff Weltman for me has done a lot of good things. I know people want to just trash on him and say that he hasn't done anything for the organization. He's been here 9 years and nothing has happened and all of that. Like I hear that to an extent. Obviously, he was coming in when the team was kind of middling and they were kind of what Chicago normally is or Miami has been in the last few years, kind of in the middle of the pack. He decided to blow it up. He was able to get the draft pick that would be Franz Wagner. He drafted Jalen. He drafted um, AB as well, right? He drafted Paolo. He had a pretty good draft starting in the 2001 range. If you go back a little further, it maybe didn't he didn't hit as well on some of those, but you're not going to have a perfect draft record. Now, not being aggressive, I think, is what really frustrates the fans the most. Him not doing a trade at the trade deadline last year, him only doing a cost saving trade this year. So in 2 years, the only trade he did was just to get under the tax. That can be infuriating, especially when the team has been unhealthy for a couple of years and he just assumes that okay, he didn't do a trade last year because the biggest thing, the type of player or the player we're going to get in this trade deadline is Jalen back from injury. Great, Jalen never came back. This year, the same thing. Oh, we're just going to get healthy. I don't want to do anything until I see this team healthy. What makes you think we're going to see the team healthy, right? It's like how many years in a row do you need to see it? We had one really good year that where everybody was healthy. The rest of the time, not everyone, but there have been people being injured a little bit left and right, right? They haven't had the consistency. But so to just say, oh, I'm not going to do anything because I want to see this team healthy, well, we may never see this team healthy. And you're going to have to make trades in the offseason if we underperform. So we will never see the team healthy again. We can see what Cleveland did. Cleveland didn't wait to see if how their team would look with Darius Garland injured all the time. They just traded Darius Garland. I'm not saying we should trade our guys. All we really needed to do, I feel, is to make a smaller change to get some more scoring for our bench unit because that's really where we're suffering. The defense isn't great, but it's good enough where it needs to be. It's our offense is really that suffering, and most of that for me is coming off the bench. Yes, Paolo can score more. Yes, Jalen will likely might take more shots and get more aggressive on offense. Even if we eventually get Franz back, sure, that's going to help the offense out. But if you look at our scoring off of the bench, it's not been good at all for most of the season. So I think if we would have been able to get Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis, if we were able to get those guys, that would have been a huge boon for our bench unit. Didn't happen. I have him ahead of number one because he's a little higher up on the org chart and he's the one that's going to make a decision likely on the coach, even though Jeff is on the in the last year of his deal. So maybe he knows something. Maybe he knows he's going to get an extension or something. And that's why he didn't do anything in the trade deadline, because you would expect that he would have to be a little bit more aggressive if he's trying to save his job. But maybe he knows he's gonna stay and the Magic are going to extend him. I don't know if that's just the reality of the situation, but I think he still has his seat a bit warm really at this point because it's he's done some things. So again, not poo-pooing all the things that he's done. He's built a roster. We have a roster that has a lot of talent on it, right? So people want to get upset about how we're playing. I don't think it's about roster construction. I think it's more what has to happen with the number one guy. And if we're just gonna go to that person there, the number one guy is Jamahl Mosley. He's done a really good job in building a culture here in Orlando, getting us out of where we were at a bit of a rut there for a bit. Again, the culture is what everybody's going to talk about. The defensive identity is what everybody's going to talk about. But I'm again not going to poo-poo everything that he's done. He's done a good job. He's been along for the ride, but would they eventually have just gotten better organically with a different coach who would have had a different identity, right? Like maybe they just wouldn't maybe they wouldn't have played such tough defense because they would have played better on offense because that other coach would have had a different philosophy, right? So we'll never know. And again, I don't want to, say anything poor about Mosley. He's done an admirable job. He's been able to do a lot with less, like especially last year when Franz, Jalen, and Paolo were all out. And they were able to get a couple wins there against teams that were higher in the standings. So he was able to really just get a lot of buy-in from the other guys and be able to ink out these wins. He's been in the top two in Coach of the Year category before in the 23-24 season when we won 47 games. So there's been positives, right? So I'm not going to say that he's somebody that hasn't done a good job. He has done a good job, but it might have run its course. And just even if it's fair or unfair, to be honest, because if Weltman needs to be saving his job, then that just means that Mosley would be the one that would be on the way out. Now, I don't see it really being something that again the Magic are a pretty reasonable, I feel, organization. They don't do things that are crazy. They do things that are methodical. They have been methodical. So in that way it's been very good to an extent because that is the way an organization should be run. They shouldn't just be making trade after trade after trade after trade to try to put band-aids on wounds that are more than just superficial. So this, unfortunately, with the expectations that the Magic had going into the season, that the offense should have been better, that we were going to continue the defense. And on both counts, we haven't had as good of a defense and the offense, which has scored more points. It has. But if you look at the offensive rating, it's not where it needs to be for us to be a title contender, which was what a lot of people were talking about the Magic being title contenders. And with them only 3 games over 500, someone's going to get the axe. And if it's not going to be Jeff Weltman, it might be both of them. But if it's not Jeff, then it's definitely going to be Mosley, even if it's not necessarily fair, because that's the job that they go for as the coach in the NBA. So I'd say Mosley is going to be the guy with the hottest seat right now. Fans have been calling for him to be removed earlier in the year, but again, Jeff Weltman being the guy who he is, he's being loyal and he's gonna let Mosley have that last chance at the playoffs here. And if he doesn't get, I would say at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, then he's definitely gonna be on the way out, unfortunately, which stinks. But we're at that phase in the contention cycle really that we can't hold on to guys that aren't going to help us win, especially when next year we get real expensive. That's why I have Mosley as the number one guy on the list who has the most pressure on him for the rest of the regular season. So to just recap, I have the 5-1 Paolo, Jalen, Wendell, Jeff Weltman, and Jamahl Mosley as the guys who have the most pressure on them for the rest of this season, especially now with Franz out. We're gonna have to really dig in, and hopefully the Magic do what they have done the past few years and really overperform after the All-Star break. I know last year maybe didn't go as well. They still had a better record than what was expected, but still, we need the guys to hunker down, do their job, have high hands, as Mosley says all the time, play good defense, and hopefully the All-Star break is really giving them a chance to kind of decompress, get away a little bit, have a couple practices to be able to import some offensive sets, hopefully, to get Desmond shooting threes again, to be able to get Paolo moving and cutting instead of him grabbing the ball at 18 feet and having to decipher the defense. Hopefully, the Magic have started to implement some of those things for the rest of the regular season so that we perform really well, and then we'll be able to keep everybody for next season because we've made a long run into the playoffs. But if that doesn't happen, then those 5 guys are definitely going to be looked at as guys who could theoretically not be on the team next year. I don't think the Jalen or Paolo really should be in any danger to not be here next year, but crazier things have happened. So, again, drop a comment below who you think has the most pressure this season, and share, like this video. And if you want to do so, hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on any content that I produce. I want to thank you very much for clicking on this video and spending a little bit of time talking magic with me. I hope you're having a great day.